Welcome to part 2, configuration using SMIT. The node that we're looking at right now in white is our primary node, PowerHA7 and the one here in black is our backup node, PowerHA7 So a couple of things to check just to start with. You can see there I've just done a cat of the etc host file. I've got just a handful of things in there. Firstly, the loopback addresses for IPv4 and 6, so that's essential there. Secondly, the DNS server, and then these two here are the IP addresses assigned to my production network on the EN0 interfaces on both nodes. And then finally, the 218 address is the service address that we'll define in PowerHA for our application Grumpy. Next, we want to make sure that the NSOrder variable is set appropriately in AIX so that the name resolution is checked firstly using the etc host file, and then secondly bind, which is our DNS environment, so that's okay. Then we want to make sure we can ping across that EN0 heartbeat ring before we start, so we just simply here ping PowerHA7 So that looks pretty good. Before we jump into the SMIT panels for the configuration, I just need to configure a volume group, a shared volume group, and a file system for the application Grumpy. So I've got a bunch of commands here, and I'm just going to run them. So first one does a make VG called Grumpy VG. It's of type enhanced concurrent mode, which is now mandatory for PowerHA starting at version 7.1 on HDIS7. I've just varied it on, created a 200 meg file system called /testfs. This will make sure that Grumpy runs in relatively safe mode rather than creating chaos in our environment. Varied the volume group off, jumped over to the backup node and done an import. So if we just have a look on the backup and do an LSPV, you'll see there I've got Grumpy volume group defined, and it's on 783F, which is the PVID of the shared LAN. So if we just check that, there we go. So 783F and Grumpy VG. So that looks pretty good. Now we can jump into SMIT panels. The product got renamed at 7.1 to PowerHA System Mirror, which is quite a mouthful. There's a new fast path, which is SMIT Sys Mirror. There we go. I don't particularly like that myself personally, but don't worry, HACMP works just fine. One of the great things IBM have done at this level is they have done a wonderful job at cleaning up the SMIT panels. So I've just dragged in the blue background putty panel here, shows 6.1. So 6.1 here we have simple configuration, slightly more complex extended config, CSPOC for change management, and PD. Hopefully we're not in there when things go wrong. Slight differences at 7.1. I would say if you want a quick one-to-one comparison, cluster nodes and networks and applications and resources are the simple configuration. Custom cluster configuration is more towards the extended view, and CSPOC and PD remain the same. So if we want to basically start by creating our cluster, so we jump in here, just go into initial cluster setup and set up a cluster. There it defaults a name, so we don't want to use that. I'm going to call my cluster Grumpy cluster, and just add all the nodes, all the AIX nodes that want to take part in that cluster. So I've just got a simple two-node cluster, so PowerHA7 and press enter, and that will create kind of the wrapper for the cluster definition. It does jump over to the other node over the COCOMD infrastructure, run a couple of commands to query the IP networks and the volume group definitions, and runs a CO top info. So if we just quit out of that we can run that manually there. You can see we've got a cluster name called Grumpy Cluster. It's using standard authentication. We haven't got a VPN. We're not using any message encryption or VPN communications. We don't have a repository disk, so this is for your cluster aware RIX. We'll add that next. And we've got two node definitions here, so 71A, 71B, with one Ethernet network, net ether 01, with the relevant IP addresses defined. So that was pretty simple. Let's jump back in, same path, and then this time we'll add a repository disk. So I'm going to use HDIS6 and press enter. So that's our topology done. Then simply we can come into cluster applications and resources, and we're going to define our application controller, which specifies how to start and stop Grumpy, and our resource group. So let's just start by adding our application controller. These were called application servers in previous versions, so give it a name. So I'm going to call it Grumpy app, and then the stop start scripts, so minor and user local Grumpy, it's called Grumpy start with the test FS file system we just created, and then the stop is user local Grumpy stop, like so. Next I want to add the service address for Grumpy, so we can just F4 select list etc host file and just select the service address. So that's as so. And then final step here is to add the resource group, so give it a name. This is just a logical wrapper for our application, and then the nodes. So again, you can F4 select these from the SMIT panel, and it's in order of priority. So by selecting HA71A first, this is the highest priority node, and B is the backup. You've got three policies: how to start up, how to fall over, and how to fall back. So I'm going to pick the default for startup, which is on home node, highest priority node. I'm also going to keep the default for the fallover, which is just simpler to the next one in the list. And then the fallback, the default is to fallback, and that's generally never a good idea because falling back will cause another outage. It's always best to set never fallback, and you decide as a system administrator when you want to move the application back to the home node. So that creates the logical wrapper, and then the final thing we do here is just basically add the three most common things into the resource group, which is the service address, the application controller, and the volume group. And that is pretty much our configuration done. Just do a quick CL top info, and then now we can see the service address has been defined and the resource group is defined. If you want to see a little bit more information about that resource group, you can just use the CL show res command, and that will give you all the attributes in a very detailed listing of that resource group. And that's the configuration complete. So if we sheet back into SMIT HACMP, the final thing to do is just to synchronize the configuration over to the other node in the cluster, and this operation takes a couple of minutes. If it's a new cluster like the one we're just creating now, the CAA infrastructure is also created. So I've just cut a couple of minutes out there while we're waiting for that to synchronize, and as we can see from the SMIT panel there, that's been successful. If we just check things, if you jump back over to the backup node, do a topology listing, so our configuration has come over fine. Also as well, what you can do is you can do an LSPV listing, and you can see there that our HDISC6, which was the LUN we picked for the CAA repository disk, has now been renamed to CAA Private 0, and we've got a CAA VG private volume group being created. This is just like any normal sort of AIX volume groups. You can have a look at it. You can list the logical volumes that are on it. Don't change the configuration of this disk though. That is purely for AIX and for PowerHA's use. Right, okay, well that's the configuration completed. Hopefully you found that useful.